Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to say thanks to Huddle for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their teams play better using video and analytics. Huddle's a complete performance platform. They've got online tools, they have smart cameras, they've always had analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs, and even the pros use Huddle to help their teams perform at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes and a lot of their parents. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to thank Final Forms. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but Final Forms is a lot more than that. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and they provide schools with compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. They have reminders for parents about policies and physicals and all the forms that come with athletics. Final Forms can also help with team communication and attendance, and even certification management for coaches. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to thank Gipper. Gipper is the way that athletic directors, coaches, and schools create world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels in seconds. Go to Gipper.com and find out how you can create world-class content without needing any design experience. As I like to say, it's so simple, even I can do it. We use Gipper for our backdrop, we use Gipper for our announcements, and you can use Gipper to create world-class marketing content. Go to Gipper.com for more information. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to our newest sponsor, SnapRaise. Go to snapraise.com and find out how they can help you and your teams begin raising money to help supplement your programs. Remember, better fundraising makes better programs, and SnapRaise is the best. Okay. Choosing the best fundraiser for you and your group is critical, and SnapRaise makes the difference. It's easy and effective, it's safe and secure, and you can track participation and progress throughout the fundraising campaign. Go to snapraise.com and check out their testimonials from the schools that they have helped raise thousands of dollars. That's snapraise.com. Change your fundraising game plan. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. They sponsor the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program, and it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call. You can also email them at info@athleticsurveys.com for more information. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. We have a Sideline Interactive video scoring table at our gym, and it is fantastic. They not only help you raise money for your program, but they can also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call them at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs for their support. Remember, they've got a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. To find out more information and let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, or you can call them at 614-981-3589 or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going out west a little bit to the great state of Utah, and we're going to be visiting with one of my new friends, Missy Mackay-Whiteurs. Missy is a certified athletic administrator, and she's the athletic director for the Salt Lake City School District in Salt Lake City, Utah. We connected at the most recent NADC conference. Just had a great time sharing ideas, and we're very excited to have her on the podcast. Missy, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thanks, Jake. I'm excited to get your new book, by the way.
As always, these interviews help make those books happen, and you are going to be part of the third edition of the Athletic Director's Toolbox, which will be coming out probably in the spring or summer of 2023. So appreciate that. As we were sharing before we started recording, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 3 or 4 minute bio, where you were born, where you grew up and went to school, and how that all started.
I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, born and raised here, and still live here. I've ventured out a couple of times to move in other states, but always end up back in Utah. This is where my family is. And now that I've got grandchildren, this is where it seems to be planted. So I grew up here and went through all my schooling, including my college. When I was a senior in high school, I was missing school quite a bit. And so my counselor put me up to the University of Utah because I had all my credits to graduate. So I started actually in my senior year and went up and played softball at the University of Utah.
Oh, wow.
At that time, and in 1974, we were going through our Title IX issues, and that was all an up and coming thing. And so I was able to live and experience Title IX, and I'm a great proponent for it because at that time, when I was up at the U, we only had one scholarship for the whole athletic department. And Title IX was able to come in and help make that an equal opportunity for a lot of women that later on, and probably about 76 is I think when it started, we were able to start seeing more and more scholarships that were offered to our athletic departments. And I then went on a mission for my church and spent 18 months in England, and I came home and got married and just took a different path of going from physical education to accounting. And I thought that would be able to keep me where I could stay home and work and have my own business and raise my kids. And so I have 3 children. They're all growing and with a couple of grandkids now. And so it worked for that period of time. But about 5 years after, oh no, it was longer than that. It was probably about 7 years later, I decided to go back and get a master's so I could get a CPA. And I ran into an old mentor of mine up at the University of Utah, and she asked me why I never finished. She was one of my coaches on the softball team, and why I never finished my PE degree. And I gave her all my excuses. And she said, well, they were excuses. And she says, so I'll see you next quarter. And that was at the time we were still in quarters at the U. So I went up there, went back and took all my credits and ended up going to finishing and my PE, but I transferred up to Weber State because at that time, University of Utah had switched over to exercise and sports instead of physical education in the pedagogy. So the gentleman who I had originally been under now was in charge of the department up at Weber. So I switched up there and finished that degree. And then I decided that I wanted to try different avenues of education. So I went to Prescott College and got my certification for teaching. And it was a fine arts college, and it was not online because we didn't have that at that time, but I was home here in Salt Lake, but then I would go like every couple of months down to Prescott and do classes down there. And it was really a great experience. In fact, I fell in love with Prescott, Arizona, and that someday that's where I would like to maybe end up. It might be my ashes that'll be there, but it is a beautiful place. And then I taught in Catholic school systems for 8 years, and then went into charter. And I had a principal at the time who was, I thought if he can be a principal, I can be a principal. So I went on and got my master's in administration and became a principal of a charter school and an assistant principal of one of our public schools that at the same time. So I was able to do that, and but athletics have always been my passion. And growing up in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of recreation sports for women at that time. You know, in fact, girls' track wasn't even really anything. We didn't have girls' track in Utah. And so that I was allowed to be able to have a track meet one day when I was a senior in 1974, and pulled all the schools here in Salt Lake together, and we were able to have a one-day track meet. And with Coach Craig Poole, who was a great coach down at BYU, he helped me put it all together. So my love for sports has always been there. So when the athletic director's position came open at Highland High School, where I was at, I asked if I could take that position, which meant then leaving as administrator. But my true love has been in athletics. And so I was an athletic director at Highland High School for about 7 years. And then the position 5 years ago came open for the district athletic director. And I applied for that and have not looked back. And it's been a real experience. It's been a real roller coaster between athletic director at a school to be an athletic director for the whole district. Now, I only have 3 high schools, but we still have a lot of athletes that are in those 3 high schools. And but it has been, COVID really made a challenge for us. And so we've been riding through that. And in Utah, we didn't stop playing sports during COVID. We continued. And my district was not in session. We were online, and that was a lot of complaints from parents. Why can the sports still continue during COVID, but we couldn't do it they couldn't go back into the classroom. So we rode that road for 2 years, and still do. I'm over the testing of all the COVID in my district, and so ask me anything about COVID, and I probably could tell you. So I'm pretty well versed in that by now. So
we've kind of gotten away from using the C word for a while, but I do want to just quickly revisit. Your senior year, you were actually attending university and playing collegiate sports. And as you mentioned, this is back at the dawn of Title IX, and here we are celebrating 50 years of Title IX. What was, what was that like back then? I mean, was there any awareness of, the discrepancy between the men's and women's athletic departments? Anything you can, share with us?
Oh yeah, there was big discrepancies, and you could feel it. I was dating a guy that was on the track team for the university at that time, and you could see the how we were all feeling less than secondary, second class citizens compared to what these guys were getting. I mean, the track team had tons and tons of scholarships, and yet we had one for the whole athletic department. And so there was a lot of feelings that were going around. We lost a lot of athletes, great women that went off to other colleges where they were able to get scholarships.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at it now, women's golf scholarships are probably the least that are used, and yet that was unheard of back 50 years ago, of having women's golf scholarships. And so I see where there was a lot of animosity. And once that broke through, our teams, the women started coming in droves, that felt like that coming to the University of Utah, because we did have some great athletic teams up there, but it did take having to move some of the men's teams out. And like wrestling was one of them. And I remembered how angry it was on a collegiate level that they were moving men's wrestling out. And so to be able to get the scholarships for the women. And then the teams were starting to become swimming and track then became more co-ed. And so you were seeing a more equitable situation happening within the scholarships at that time.
Right. And again, here we are 50 years later, we still have a lot of room to go.
Absolutely.
But, for our listeners, our guest today is Missy Mackay-Whiteurs.
Mackay-Whiteurs.
What? Mackey. Okay. I
Remember
told you I was going to mess that up.
Scottish.
Missy Mackay-Whiteurs, and she's the athletic director for the Salt Lake City School District, also a certified athletic administrator. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Wall of Fame Vital Signs for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Okay. Wall of Fame by Vital Signs has a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive touchscreen consoles and an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments by going to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com for more information. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. Welcome back, everyone. We're visiting with Missy Mackay-Whiteurs, the athletic director for the Salt Lake City School District. Missy, you talked about, your career, teaching, coaching, becoming an AD, but let's focus in on those first couple of years of going to the other side of the desk, becoming that athletic director. Share a little bit about that experience.
Because we didn't have full-time athletic directors in Salt Lake City School District at that time, I had to go back into the classroom at the same time. And I think every administrator should go back into the classroom at least for a couple of years, because you think that you know what's going on and you really don't. The kids change, and they change quickly. So it was a challenge, but it was really rewarding in being able to get to know a lot of our students besides just teaching PE. And I also had a pep club, and I was advisor for cheer at the same time. And so I was able to work a lot with kids. And I think that was my biggest, that I missed as an administrator, because a lot of times as an administrator, you're there to do discipline and not the positives that come with helping kids get through some of their trials, but also being able to their rewards, especially through their activities. And so going from being an administrator over to the athletic director, I was really lucky because at that time my principal still considered the athletic director as part of the administrative team. And even though we weren't paid that, we still were, as an administrator, we were still considered part of that team. And so it was really a great experience for me. It was right where I wanted to be. It was my true love, and that was working with kids and helping them build things in athletics, like what had helped me, even though we didn't have a lot of athletics that we could do when I was growing up, except rec or church ball and stuff. It was being able to help kids change lives through athletics, and being able to see a lot of their growth and things that help them to be able to help them to become adults. And I think that's the one thing that I've really enjoyed as being a school athletic director, was being able to work directly with kids. And I do miss that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember, going from I was a head coach and an athletic director for a number of years. And when I went to a different school just as the athletic director, you didn't have that direct contact, with kids like you did as a coach. And I really, it felt like I was working hard to, go out to practices and make those connections. So very cool stuff. Does any, do you have an episode that kind of sticks out? You talked about helping kids, become their best. Anything stick out for you? Any story you can share?
Well, I think even though pep club's not a sport that is actually, I can hear my dog scratching, as a sport, but a sanctioned sport, but it was one where it brought in a lot of kids of color and a lot of our Hispanic girls who didn't really have a place or fit in a lot of sports. And this gave them an opportunity to be able to be in a sport. And I think that to me was probably the greatest experience that I've had in coaching, was watching girls grow and reach out and go outside of their boundaries that they didn't think that they could before, and nor did they think they could ever be maybe somebody that was in pep club, because it didn't fit where they normally were at. But it was also brought in girls in the district that I'm in. Hold on. Sorry.
It wouldn't be a podcast if we, didn't have a phone ringing or a bell ringing or a dog.
Or a dog. Anyway, I think one of the things that it did is that the economics at the school I was at that time, there was a big discrepancy between them. And it brought a lot of my kids, a lot of these girls together that normally would not have been. They don't live in the same neighborhoods. They don't go to the same area. A lot of them were on comp soccer, but a lot of our other girls that could not afford comp soccer were not playing soccer. And it was able to, I watched the humbleness of a lot of my girls who had economics higher than what some of their other ones. One really sticks out is that we had 8 girls that were on school fee waivers at the time and couldn't afford their uniforms. And the president of Pep Club at that time went home to her mom and told her that. And next thing I know, I've got the mom crying in my office. What can we do? What can we do to make sure these girls have something? And so to see that bonding and charity that some of these girls learned, and I think that has happened even when I coached volleyball and softball. Was just in seeing that you bring different economics, different growth, and neighborhoods together, and they become one. and where they wouldn't, because we have kids from each side of the valley going to our schools, and so they're not ones that are usually running around together. They're not going to church together. They're not, the only time they do see each other is at school. But it did bring a lot of growth. And when we had homeless, I had a couple of them that were living in homeless shelters, and to watch the growth from the girls that were in these homeless shelters into what they knew, what they wanted in life, and help them grow. It was a great experience.
Yeah, and again, those are those great stories that we love to hear that happen because of sports and through sports that might not have happened otherwise. And I think most ADs would love to have a thriving pep club for their sports teams too. Very cool stuff. Once again, we're visiting with Missy Mackay-Whiteurs, and she's the athletic director at Salt Lake City Public Schools. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms for their support of the podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but they're more than just forms. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and they provide schools with compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. They have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come with athletics. Final Forms can also help with team communication and attendance, and even certification management for coaches. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this with secure language translation. It's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with the Final Forms team. Welcome back, everyone. Missy, we always like to have our guests have the opportunity to give a shout out to the mentors that they've had in their life. Of course, there's a lot, but who are a couple of people that have helped you along the way?
I think when you sent me that question, I think I was going back through, because, as the older you get, like you said, the more you have. But one of the greatest mentors in my life was my grandmother. My grandmother played softball for the Shamrocks here in Salt Lake. And it was during World War II. And so whenever I watch A League of Their Own, that's who I think of as my grandmother. She was a catcher. And she continued, even after she had kids, had my mom, to still continue to play. And she really supported me in my athletic endeavors and wanting to push ahead, and was excited as more women's sports opened up at that time. So my grandmother was a big mentor of mine in a lot of ways, and especially through athletics. I've had a couple of others that one would have been Janet Thurgood from the University of Utah, and Sandy Beveridge, and they were both my coaches up there in the 70s, and they were the ones who got me back into athletics and back into sports and into teaching and coaching back in the early 90s. And so, and to leave that field of numbers, which was boring, accounting. So that's where I really wanted to be, was back in with working with kids and into the world of sports again.
Wow. What a great connection to have with your grandmother, playing. I just, the scenes from that movie were coming back to me. How did she comment about the movie? Was it an accurate portrayal of what it was like back then?
She felt it was, yes.
Yeah.
She said she remembers traveling and having to wear the dresses, and instead of, especially as a catcher.
Right.
She said it was really tough, and she loved every minute of it. And she said, the movie brought back a lot of memories to her, and some good, some bad, and especially having to fight the men's world. And when the men came back from war, she said, it was really sad to watch how they were pushed aside. The women were pushed aside. And so she was happy to see back in, as time went on, women coming more forward, especially in the world of athletics and sports.
Oh, wow. Appreciate you sharing that. Once again, our guest today is Missy Mackay-Whiteurs. She's a certified athletic administrator, and she's the director of athletics for the Salt Lake City School District. We're going to take another break, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and find out how you can start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channels. That's Gipper.com. You can do it in seconds on any device and without needing any design experience. As I like to say, it's so simple, even I can do it. Okay. Our virtual backdrop for the podcast is through Gipper, and our podcast announcements are now on Gipper templates. Go to Gipper.com and start creating world-class marketing content for your school. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Missy, you and I have been doing this for a couple of years, but we've got a lot of younger athletic directors that listen, and I think it's important to share the journey that we have been on. So, share a little bit about your experience. How did you first hear about UIAAA in the state of Utah and your involvement with NIAAA? Share a little bit about your journey.
When I first became the athletic director, I started receiving emails from the UIAAA and wasn't sure what it was really all about, because it wasn't something that was really totally, that at that time I was introduced to at the beginning. Then I was put on the ADAC committee and told that I was going, Dave Boyack called me. I remember he was on the golf course and said, by the way, your name's been put in for Region 6. You're the new ADAC representative. And I went, what in the heck is that? So with that committee, I was on for probably 6 years and loved every minute of it, working with Hutch and Rich Barton and many of the others, names that from our state of Utah. They helped me build a lot as an athletic director, and being able to be involved with them and watching through their experiences, looking what to do. And I reached out to them quite a bit. Rich Barton, I think, is probably one of my favorite people that helps, and he's always there encouraging. So I was able to serve on that. But at that time, I started going to the NIAAA conferences, and my very first one was in Orlando, and started going to the classes. And I was like, oh, wow. At that time, getting your CAA wasn't a big push, and as it is now. And I do have my project and stuff to finish my CMAA. I just have to submit everything, because that to me was one of my biggest goals, is make sure that, I've reached the top of that we have as athletic directors. And I think that's really important, especially my district has supported us in our CAAs, in obtaining our CAAs. I have one athletic director now who needs to take her test, and she forgot to send in the paperwork. So when she went to sit for the test, wasn't able to. So at that time, we'll all be CAAs, at least with minimum. And when Monica takes her test. And I think that's really important, because where else can you, as an athletic director, have professional development and learn best practices, but from our LTI classes that we have. And through that, I've been able to now teach on the NIAAA level, and that has been awesome, because I've taught here on the UIAAA and love it. I love teaching, but I love teaching more about what I have passion for, and that is for our sports and our kids, and how can it build them into becoming adults and giving them lifelong experiences. And also being on the accreditation committee is meeting new people, new ideas, new things that you just don't, behind the scenes you're not aware of that are taking place on the national level until you are actually involved on the national level.
I mean, you hit on all of those key points. Taking the courses, getting involved, which those on their own are just great experiences. That's what leads to the CAA. You take the exam, take 790, so you can start teaching in your own state. At your own conference. Continue to get involved, get on a committee. You were on accreditation. I was on certification for a number of years, and just those relationships. That's how I met those people you mentioned, Rich Barton, Hutch Hunter, and all the others. And it takes me back to that very first LTI course that I took, and those instructors. I'm thinking, boy, this is really cool. I wonder if I can ever do this. And so again, if you're listening, Missy just outlined, the path to get involved. Very cool stuff. For our listeners, we are visiting today with Missy Mackay-Whiteurs. She's a certified athletic administrator on the cusp of getting her CMAA, and also the district athletic director for Salt Lake City Schools. We're going to take another break, hear from one of our sponsors, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone. Once again, our guest is Missy Mackay-Whiteurs, certified athletic administrator from Salt Lake City, Utah. Missy, I'm going to put you on the spot. One of the things that we like to do is this idea of sharing best practices. So what are a couple of things that you do in your schools or that you've seen in your experience that you'd like to pass on to our listeners as best practices?
I think it starts with our coaches in best practices in making sure we are getting the best coaches that we can. I know that a lot of parents don't think sometimes what we do is right, and they have their own opinions. But what I've seen each of our schools do is to make sure that our coaches, that they're what's best for the kids and what's best for the schools. And that not what's best for the parents, but what's best for the kids. And in making sure that our coaches are certified and that they have gone through all of the trainings that are required for Register My Athlete. But we also go a step further in our district, and they have to do our district trainings also. And so that's I don't know if a best practice, but I think it has also helped in situations such as when it comes down to FERPA and different things like that, that our lay coaches that are not teachers, because we do have a lot of them that are outside of the schools that do coach because they love kids, they love to sports, and they want to be able to coach those kids. They put their all their time and efforts into it, but they're not aware of a lot of things such as child abuse, sexual abuse, sexual contact and stuff like that. And that's where our district, we have them do, there's 8 trainings that they need to do on top of the ones that we have. And we do the best we can in trying to make sure that is completed before they even begin to coach. And so they don't even get their fingerprinting done until all of those things are completed. And I think that has helped us in avoiding a lot of problems that, I've seen some of the other schools come across, and or across the nation. You hear of different things that happen. I think the other thing is making sure best practices. We have full-time ADs now in my district. We had not had those before. We only had them as half-time. They were teachers the other half. But having them where they have their full They're full-time. They have their hands on it at all times, which allows parents, coaches, and kids to be able to reach out to our athletic directors at different times of the day versus where they're teaching. And I've seen a difference that has helped in our athletic programs and in our schools in building community with our students as well as with our parents and with our coaches. And I think that helps a lot our athletic directors all over are stressed to the max when it comes to being an AD. I know that, all the nights that I spend away from home, even though all my children are all grown and out of the house, I had my husband start doing stats for football or doing the book for basketball just so we could see each other. And got him involved, and now he's the head coach of girls and boys golf at the school I was at. So I think that as an athletic director, you put your time, your effort, your soul, your sweat and tears into doing what is best for kids and what's best for coaches in the schools. And I think those are at least two of the things that we've been able to do in our district that has been able to help our programs and help our athletes.
No, I would agree 100% about the certification for your coaches, particularly, those community coaches, the people that teach in your building, they're going to go through those trainings as an educator. But, that person coming, as we say, from the community or off the street, I've had a number of them at my schools when I was still in AD. They would say the same thing. I didn't realize, all the things you had to go through, to do this. And it really raises the bar, I think, as far as the perception of what a professional coach. It's not just, Billy or Mary, off the street.
Yes.
These people are really, they're professional coaches. Very cool stuff. We'll do this at the end, but if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit and find out more about how you do things at your school, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Is to go to the Salt Lake City School District webpage. And if they go under athletics, they can see my email on there and email me or give me a call up my work phone number, which is also listed on that page. I would say they can email me Missy.Mackay-Whiteurs at saltlakecityschooldistrict.org, but nobody will know how to spell that correctly. So the best is to go onto the webpage and be able to pull it off from there.
There you go. Again, for our listeners, our guest today is Missy Mackay-Whiteurs from the Salt Lake City School District. Go to that website and shoot her an email, pick her brain a little bit. We're going to take another break. I know you're shocked, but we have our sponsors we want to acknowledge. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our newest sponsor, Snap Raise. There's a lot of fundraising groups out there, but Snap Raise is the best one that I've seen. Snap Raise believes that better fundraising makes better programs. Depart from the headaches of the past. No more selling products or management of lists and inventory and outreach. You also are not dealing with any upfront costs. Your data is secure. You want to choose the best fundraiser for you and your school, and Snap Raise can make a big difference. It's easy and effective. It's safe and secure, and you can track participation and progress. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their testimonials from the schools that they have helped raise thousands of dollars. Okay. Snapraise.com. Change your fundraising game plan and start your fundraiser today. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Missy, since we started doing these interviews a little over 2 years ago, one of our consistent questions has involved this idea of social awareness. And I know that's a big umbrella, but in our position as leaders, as athletic directors, how can athletic directors do a better job for their stakeholders of being socially aware? Do you have any advice for us?
I think it's knowing and reading your community. I think that's a big, big thing. It's in knowing who are you serving? Not just not just the kids, but as our communities. The community makes up a big part of your schools, and that includes all of the people within your areas and your neighborhoods. And because my schools are very diverse in their communities, I think it's really important as an athletic director to know what your communities you're serving, not just the teams and just not the kids. Getting your parents involved, becoming more aware of, we speak over 100 languages in our district, becoming more aware of some of the cultural differences that the kids have, and supporting those cultural differences in working with our kids. I think that has helped a lot in especially with some of our coaches that come from maybe different areas of the valley. We are in an urban district. We're the most urban district in Utah. And so like I said, we speak over 100 languages. So I think it's really important as we hire coaches is they recognize what they're getting into. And that is a lot of our diversities that we have inside our district. And I think it's really important. I also think it's important that we hire coaches that are of diverse populations. And so that kids can see people like them, let's say, and being able to see what they can accomplish also. And as we see, we have a lot of football players who have gone out are in the NFL, and what a great role models they are for those kids. But I also take it that it's our coaches that help feed that to help our kids to be able to accomplish those goals.
Yeah. Obviously, the hiring part is so important, having those role models there. Are you guys doing anything? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but are you doing anything more directly with students in that area? Any student activities that you can share?
They do. A lot of our, especially our football teams, I think are probably the most that do that. They will do luau's. They'll do, have food of some of the cultures that are on their teams. And I think that's been a great opening for a lot of our kids in being able to see where their different cultures have come from, and not just some of us that have been born and raised in Utah and are of that the majority, and being able to open it up for our kids to be able to see other areas of the world through the eyes of their teammates.
Yeah, you mentioned luau. It took me back to my college days. I went to a small college in Oregon, but we had a very large Hawaiian population, and there's an annual luau. They still do it. Just very, very cool stuff. Just excellent stuff. Again, for our listeners, we're visiting today with Missy Mackay-Whiteurs, Certified Athletic Administrator and the Director of Athletics for the Salt Lake City School District. Going to take another break, but we'll be back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their athletes play better using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They've got online tools. They have smart cameras. They've always had analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs, and even the pros use Huddle to help their teams perform at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes and a lot of their parents. You want to find out more about how Huddle can help you in your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Missy, 100 years ago, when I was in high school, our coaches used to say things like, come on, you got to be tough, or come on, you got to suck it up. And, we knew what they meant and we did it. Since then, I know we have gotten so much better at communicating these ideas to student athletes, but I still think toughness is an important part of athletics and it's an important part of life. So my question to you, how can we help kids develop toughness while also being sensitive to the very real challenges that a Generation Z kid is experiencing that I never had to go through? Do you have any advice?
Well, I think the book Inside Out Coaching has helped me a lot in looking in a different way of coaching and not being on the outside of coaching and then going inside. It's coming from the outside, inside out. And I think that right there, and it was you at the class that I was in that mentioned this book. And so I hurried and downloaded it right then at the class when I took your class last December. And one of the things was that is bringing our kids of what it means, not just being physically tough, not just being mentally tough, but also to be emotionally tough. And how do we do that? How do we build the best athlete, not just from physically, but to be able to bring them socially, emotionally, to be aware of those type of things with our kids. And I think social and emotional awareness is really important these days. And it's not just yelling and screaming and swearing at a kid. It's also teaching them from inside how to be charitable, how to be humble, how to be tough emotionally, that way, in being able to help others and to be able to work together as a team and just not as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I still look back at those days, and I don't want to say we didn't know any better, but it was just, that's how it was. I think you're absolutely right. Communicating those ideas is the key to success. And those coaches that are winning, they're winning because of their ability to communicate, their ideas to their student athletes. Very good stuff. Well, this has been really cool, reconnecting. As I mentioned at the start of the show, we connected at the NADC, but we're not done yet. We always wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. So we're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack that sponsor the segment. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So when we come back, we're going to find out what Missy Mackay-Whiteurs is going to put into her athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. As I said, we want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their website, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, I have had a great time visiting with our guest today, Missy Mackay-Whiteurs from Salt Lake City, Utah. But Missy, I'm challenging you right now to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in your athletic director toolbox?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I have a brand new one coming on at one of my high schools. So I just found out yesterday who it was. And so this really helped me in thinking, what would I want for our next athletic director? One of the people that I did forget to mention that has been a big influence in my life in here as an AD has been Jamie Sheets from Park City, Utah. And Jamie helped me a lot as an early athletic director. And one of the things that he kept saying to me over and over again, I think he was president of the ADAC when I first went on, was that make sure of being involved, being involved with the UIAAA, being involved with the NIAAA, but it was working on the CAA and becoming more knowledgeable about what an athletic director does. A lot of principals, a lot of times will just choose a person because they have that hole in the schedule and they need somebody. They don't look at really what does an athletic director can consist of. And so my 3 tips is first of all is to make sure that they have joined the UIAAA and the NIAAA. We have a dual state option, so that's good. And being in working on their CAA and immediately in starting as soon as they can. And now that they've got so many classes online, I think it's fabulous. Our state of Utah also now has where my district anyway, they're allowing our LTI classes for lane changes. And so that has been a real positive in encouraging our athletic directors. So I think, one is becoming involved with your state and your national organizations. 2 is making sure that you are signed up for your LTI classes, and whether it's 1 or 4 classes when you go to your state conferences, you walk out of there with so much knowledge and new ideas that I think it's really important. And then the other tip for a new AD is really getting to know your coaches. Make sure you have those coaches meetings, have those meetings and being able to let them know what are the protocol for your district in purchasing, in your trainings. And as the athletic director, you are the tip of the iceberg. You've got this huge iceberg underneath you, where you're the umbrella over all of athletics, and parents are going to come to you. They're not going to come to a lot of coaches. A lot of times they're going to come to you to complain about the coach. And so how are you going to handle those parents that do come, especially when they come attacking coaches? Where do you stand with that? So I think maybe that was more than 3, but I believe that the first big things are becoming involved in your state organization, the national organization, getting that CAA. You can get that CAA in less than a year now with it being online. And hopefully your district or your school supports you on doing that, because it has made better athletic directors for me as our athletic directors have gone through all of the classes to become CAAs.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. The ease with which you can, meet those requirements is certainly, much better than back in the day. And it wasn't that tough back then either, but great tools. Thanks for sharing.
Well, it took longer back then.
A little bit longer.
Online.
One more time, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, and listeners, I certainly encourage you to do so. What's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Go to Salt Lake City School District website and go under athletics. And my email, missy.mackay-whiteurs@slcschools.org is there. I encourage you to copy it from there instead of trying to spell it, because even I can mess it up myself as I'm spelling it. So that long name. And I would love to hear from other people. I love hearing from all over the country here. I've loved doing those international classes too, just to be able to get to know other ADs from other countries and what are some of their challenges and what they do to overcome those challenges.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what we need. Sherry Stice and Ed Lockwood to do is send you and I off on an international mission.
There we go. I like that.
All right. Missy, thanks so much for sharing today. All the best as you continue to try to squeeze in some summer vacation, and we'll look forward to connecting again, if not before, in Nashville.
All right.
For our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in today. Remember, the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews are being uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks again for listening today. Come back again just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. And before we go, we want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. They can help you generate funds for your athletic department, but also create the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live demo to see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Thanks again for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.